In a world where carbs are your enemy, you need one man to help you fight your battles. That man is Jimmy.
Combating nutrition disinformation and general bull. It's Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com.
Been looking for a quality brand of CBD oil and didn't know where to turn? Let me introduce you to Botan CBD. Go to botancbd.com, that's BOTAN CBD.com, and you'll see a full line of CBD oil products. The benefits of CBD oil are plentiful, including pain relief, anti-inflammation, mental clarity and focus, stress and anxiety reliever, and the list goes on. I've been using Botan CBD oil on my sciatica pain, and it makes it disappear. You can rub it on the body or take it orally, and you can trust that Botan CBD is the highest quality CBD oil on the market. They are a pharmaceutical grade organic CBD, small batch, and handcrafted for you. Head on over to botancbd.com and use the code Jimmy at checkout for 15% off your first order. Live life well. Botan CBD.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another Instagram Live, and we're here with another episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. As always, if you want to engage in the content live, we do this twice a day. Generally, we start over on Instagram Live, and we also simulcast on Facebook Live. So Instagram, Facebook. And we do this a couple of times a day, you guys, where we basically jibber jabber about the news of the day that's happening in the world of health, especially ones talking about ketogenic diets. I try to keep you up to date on latest studies that come out, just pretty much any information that's making news in the world of nutritional health. I'm trying to bring it to you. So glad you're here. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay for up to 24 hours. So you've got to go follow me online. I'm at Living Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there on Instagram, you can actually access it for 24 hours on replay here on Facebook. It just lives here. It's just, does it ever disappear on Facebook? I don't think so. I think you can pass it around. Definitely you guys here, share in all of your favorite groups. If you do happen to miss any past episodes, you can see them all up on YouTube. I do upload those daily to YouTube, so I'm Jimmy Rants over there as well. So you can do a keyword search. You can also go youtube.com/livinglowcarbman. And then finally, we have the best of the best moments of this here show in podcast form. It's the Jimmy Rants podcast on Apple Podcasts as well as Stitcher. Yeah, that's where we are. JimmyRants.com is the website. Today's Jimmy Rants is an issue that continues to rage in the ketogenic community, and I simply don't know why. There has been this kind of undercurrent debate within the keto world over which is more important. Should you have the preponderance of what you eat be a higher fat diet, or should you have the preponderance of what you eat be a higher protein diet? Now, as someone who's done a pretty darn higher protein approach as a hack last year, I tested a 3 gram of protein for every 1 gram of fat diet and basically no carbs. When I did that 3 grams of protein for every 1 gram of fat, I still, you guys, the preponderance and most of my nutrition came from fat. It was somewhere around 55 to 60-ish% of my total calories, even on that extremely high amount of protein, came from fat. And there's kind of this notion that, well, you don't want to eat too much protein, you don't want to eat too much fat, and then those two groups kind of butting heads. And honestly, I'm kind of over that. I think we're talking semantics here, and we're talking very highly individualized nutrition advice. So what I want to talk about here today is when you hear someone like myself and Dr. Will Cole and Dr. John Lemansky and others talk about moderating down on protein. Moderating protein is much more important for people with insulin resistance and other blood sugar and insulin issues. And I got a story here, you guys. This is out of Medical Daily. Here's how much protein you need to eat on a regular basis. And it helps to articulate who needs to have maybe a little bit higher protein and who needs to have a little bit more moderated level of protein. Some ways that this issue has become convoluted is there's people saying, well, those ketogenic people are advocating for a low protein diet. And we're really not. Low would be under 50 grams. That's low. Nobody's advocating for under 50 grams. Moderate protein would probably be in like the 100 to 125, 130 range. But let me get to that here in a second. I want to read this story because it's really, really important. Here's how much protein you need to eat on a regular basis. This is on medicaldaily.com, written by Johnny Vatican. For bodybuilders and increasingly for endurance athletes, a protein-rich food as the basis of your diet is necessary as the air that you breathe. For these athletes, protein is a must because it builds and maintains muscle. You can't really build muscle unless you at least eat adequate amounts of protein. And it's that word adequate that is key here. Adequate doesn't mean unlimited. Adequate doesn't mean you just load up on protein, because as you'll see here in a minute, having excess protein does have consequences if you go beyond what your body needs. Protein also replenishes the amino acid supply that helps to produce enzymes, hormones, and other tissues that they need to compete. This is why we call them essential amino acids, because they're essential because your body doesn't make them, and if you don't eat them, you start to have issues with all of these pathways with enzymes, hormones, and other tissues, and obviously muscle. Bodybuilder athletes know that eating high quality protein, which they say comes from meat, fish, eggs, dairy, or soy. Soy is the only one on that list I'd be like, bleh. Don't do soy. Within 2 hours after exercise, either by itself or mixed with a carbohydrate, enhances muscle repair and growth. So the reason bodybuilders eat a carbohydrate with a protein after a workout is insulin is a growth hormone. And so if you can boost your insulin level, which you will, by consuming carbohydrate, and then you add in the amino acids and the protein for the repair, it helps to speed up that process and make that process more efficiently. There's debate within the ketogenic circle whether you actually need to eat carbohydrate in order to get that effect, or if simply by eating a little more protein, you get the same effect without all the negative effects that would come from the carbohydrate. I tend to lean on that end of things. I know on the days that I do some kind of glycolytically demanding muscle building workout, I will bump up my protein about 15 to 20 grams at least over what I would typically consume. For the rest of us non-extreme and everyday human beings, I hate that they put it that way, non-extreme. So if you lift weights and you're a bodybuilder, you're extreme? I don't think so. I don't think my friend over here, Luis, would consider himself extreme. Protein remains an essential nutrient for the body. That's true. That we have to replenish daily. Yep. Needless to say, proteins do most of the work in our cells, and they are required for the structure, function, and regulation of the body's tissues and organs. So I hope you're getting the point that protein is a necessity, and that getting the right amounts of protein is critical, which is what this article is talking about. If you're just joining us, we're talking about how much protein you need to eat, and kind of the overriding theme of what I want to talk about here today is that moderating protein, which is what you do when you do a ketogenic diet. A well-formulated ketogenic diet is one that's low in carbs, moderate in protein, high in fat. I didn't write the rules. That's the definition of keto. And so you can actually be in ketosis at varying levels of protein. As we're talking about here, if you're an athlete, you're going to use more protein in your diet. If you're a little less of an athletic type, then you'll have a more moderate level of protein. Nobody's eating low protein. So how much protein do we need to keep functioning? So they did a review of the medical literature, and it affirms that protein should be consumed on a regular basis. The doctors involved in this review recommend that you choose unprocessed meats, poultry, seafood, eggs, or dairy as your primary protein source. You know what I loved about that list? Every single one of them is animal-based. And this is important, you guys, because you're going to hear people in the plant-based world say, well, we get all the amino acids and proteins and all that we need for our bodily needs from beans and from soy and from all this kind of plant-based proteins. But there's a dirty little secret none of the plant-based protein people want you to know about. And the secret is you cannot get the complete profile of amino acids that your body requires unless you eat animal foods. This is the major problem with the vegan diet, the major problem with the vegetarian diet that does not include eggs and fish. You simply cannot, will not get all of the amino acids that your body needs. And so it's really great that this medical review and the doctors involved in it say make sure you get meat, poultry, seafood, eggs, or dairy as your protein. Consuming animal products, they say, helps to ensure that you get all the essential amino acids that your body requires. Every single one of them. Every single one of the amino acids that you need is in animal foods. You think God's stupid? God knew what he was doing when he made animals. He knew that they would provide sustenance for man. And if man consumed animals, which is how it was intended, we'd get all the protein we need. We need to remember, here's the key point, you guys. We need to remember, however, that only a limited amount of protein can be absorbed by our bodies during a meal. Did you realize that? I remember interviewing this gentleman, Dr. Donald Layman. He is a protein expert many years ago now on the Living La Vida Low Carb show. And Dr. Layman, who's done quite a bit of research, you can look him up, Layman, on the subject of protein. And I remember there was a podcast where he said, you know, if you're going to eat protein in your meals, try not to eat any more than 30 grams of protein for breakfast, 30 grams of protein for lunch, and 30 grams of protein for supper. Because they say once you get over that 30-gram threshold, then your body starts to have to figure out ways to deal with the extra protein. Okay. Now, again, if you're an athlete, you're probably going to convert that over into glucose, which will then be used up as energy in the gym and during your workout. But what if you don't do that? What if you're a little more sedentary and you go over that 30-gram profile of protein? What happens to the glucose that's produced? What happens in your body? And then what happens if you're already metabolically challenged from things like insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, any number of things where your body just doesn't respond well to glucose effects? Yeah, you're going to see a blood sugar rise. You're going to see an insulin rise. And they kind of talk about that here in the next paragraph. If you eat more protein than your body can absorb, and remember, Dr. Layman said 30, 30, 30, okay? I asked him during that interview, well, what if you only eat twice a day because you're so satiated with keto, you only end up eating twice a day. Can you go 45, 45? He said you can, but you're still going to have the propensity to have issues going over the 30 grams. Now, I'm sure that's going to be on a case-by-case basis. I wouldn't count it as the gospel truth, but this is what one of the leading protein experts in the world had to say regarding protein distribution throughout the day. If you eat more protein than your body can absorb, the excess amino acids might be used for gluconeogenesis, which will produce glucose. So that's that big long G word I talked about in my book, Keto Clarity, that this is why we say eat adequate protein. You don't want to undereat protein. You don't want to overeat protein. You want that Goldilocks level of protein that's right for you. And we're going to get to how you figure that out here in a minute. So hang with me. I know that's in your head. Protein might also increase your insulin levels when it's consumed in large amounts. So there's kind of this misconception that's put out there that protein is supposed to be a goal in your diet. And if you make protein a goal and you don't have the goal of being a bodybuilder, what's your body supposed to do with the extra protein? How is it supposed to handle it? Which is why when we talk about keto, moderating down the protein is a key concept. Again, if you're working out hard in the gym and you're doing very glycolytically demanding exercise, then that extra amount of protein that you would consume in your diet, it's going to be no harm, no foul for you because you're using up that glucose in the body, partitioning it as energy, but also using it to help in the muscle growth. Remember, the insulin getting pushed up actually helps in the muscle growth process as well. So you got to know this going in. You got to understand when you see certain people say, oh, you need to eat more protein and it's your goal, and then fat is the lever to get to that goal, you've got to know what they're talking about. And what they're talking about is bodybuilding. And I think it's fabulous. The people that can do that and the people that do that and choose to do that, I think it's beautiful that that's what they intend to do. They're still burning fat for fuel. They're still in ketosis, even with the higher protein, and they're very low carb. So I don't think we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater by ignoring what those guys are saying, and it's ladies as well, what they're saying in that community. But what I'm saying back to them is, what about those of us with the insulin resistance? What about people who do get a response from the extra protein? I don't think we need to, again, throw the baby out with the bathwater on that end of things, which is why we're talking about it here today on Jimmy Rants. Protein's effect on insulin may vary significantly from person to person, however. Yeah, last year when I was doing that high protein, that 3-to-1 protein to fat ratio diet, I did it for 7 days. And in order to get 3 grams of protein for every 1 gram of fat, I had to eat a lot of lean meats. And at one of the days that I did that, I went to the LabCorp office to get an insulin test run. And so I got my insulin checked, and then I sat in my car and I ate about 4 or 5 chicken breasts. And then about an hour and a half, what's called postprandial, which means after you ate. Hour and a half postprandial, I went back into the office. I was very hypoglycemic, and my insulin had jumped by almost 8 to 10 points, 8 to 10 units. It was significant, you guys. And of course, all the protein guys don't deny that protein is insulinogenic, and especially the one that I ate was chicken. And you need to know that. I don't think a lot of people realize the insulin effects that come from consuming proteins, and the kind of protein matters as well. That chicken breast is kind of one of the worst, which is why I typically avoid it on my ketogenic diet. I'm trying to do things to lower insulin and lower blood sugar. I don't need no chicken breast, the amino acids in chicken breast, to sabotage me when I'm trying to be keto, okay? In the review, the doctors recommend that you should eat a low-carb, high-fat diet with moderate protein. So this is a medical group, you guys. This isn't Jimmy Moore. This isn't some Joe Schmo off the street trying to tell you to eat a low-carb, moderate protein, high-fat diet. This is a review board of medical doctors looking at ways to make sure that you get in your protein needs at the right level. And they say to eat a moderate protein diet. This applies to any level of carbohydrate restriction. So if you're 0 carb like I am right now doing this keto carnivore, then protein moderation. Now, here's kind of an interesting little side note on this. I went keto carnivore at the beginning of the year, and traditionally my ketogenic approach, I have eaten low carb, which is around 25 to 30 grams total carbohydrate, moderate protein, which generally fell between like 80 to 100 grams of protein, and then the rest fat, which was probably like 150 to 175 grams of fat. Didn't count, but I ate it to satiety. So that's been the traditional keto. Since I started keto carnivore, I have noticed that 80 to 100 grams of protein has jumped up to about 130 to 140 grams of protein. So the removal of the carbohydrate has given me a little more wiggle room to add in a little more protein. And I'm loving it, you guys. I think it's been giving me some really good benefits. I feel good on it. I like the idea of the extra protein. I've noticed that my strength, and I'm going to be getting back to it soon, but some of the strength gains that I got, I haven't lost any of that, even though I haven't been as regular on my exercise routine as I'd like to be. I haven't lost the strength. When I bring in like the kitty litter from Sam's Club, I'm still able to lift those like big 40-pound, 2 of them. I carry them in, it's no problem. So it's pretty fascinating, and I'm anxious to get back very soon to flipping that tire, and we'll be doing that here on Jimmy Ranch real soon. They defined, now here's the take home, you guys. So those of you wanting to know, how do I figure out how much protein to eat? Here's the pay dirt. They define moderate protein as somewhere between 1.2 grams to 1.7 grams per kilogram of your ideal body weight per day for adults. Okay, Americans, we have trouble with kilograms. The rest of the world, they laugh at us because we do pounds and they don't do pounds. They do kilos, kilograms, and we don't know what that is. Good thing I've done enough international speaking opportunities I can kind of convert in my head. So 1.2 grams to 1.7 grams. So this is the amount of protein, you guys, per kilo of your ideal body weight. So let's say ideal body weight is 200 pounds. Okay, I'm just making something up, trying to make the math easy. So 200 pounds in kilos is somewhere around 80 kilos. So 200 pounds, around 80 kilos. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's pretty darn close. It's ish in that ballpark. So then you multiply 80 times the 1.2 to 1.7. So just find a range in there and you'll get that. So 80 times 1.2 is 96 grams for someone whose goal is to get to 200 pounds. 80 times 1.7 is more than that. I can't do the math in my head while I'm on here, but you get the idea. So like 96 to probably like 115, 120, something like that. So then you find that range of protein, okay? You're still keeping your carbohydrates low to your tolerance level. And again, if you have a very low tolerance level, you need to be on the lower end of that protein threshold, because if you've got glucose effects that are affecting you, that makes you very susceptible to carbohydrates raising your blood sugar, then keep in mind you're also going to be susceptible to the glucose raising effects that come from protein, like we just read in those previous paragraphs. And then eat the rest of your diet in terms of dietary fat to satiety. Of course, people, whenever they hear talking about eat unlimited fat does not mean gorge yourself on fat. It means make sure you get enough to feel satiated. And of course, people don't like that. They want to hear, oh, I want exactly how many grams I should be eating. And the honest answer is it's going to vary from person to person. This whole idea of bioindividuality, it's a thing. So you've got to keep that in mind. So does that make sense? How you figure up your protein needs. The doctor said that protein intake within this 1.2 to 1.7 grams per kilogram of ideal body weight. Keep all that in mind. 1.2 to 1.7 per kilogram of ideal body weight. Not your current body weight, not in pounds, it's in kilos, and it's that 1.2 to 1.7. So definitely, if you need help with this converting, you can go on Google, do pounds to kilograms or kilograms to pounds. Just type that into a Google search and it'll give you a nice little conversion table that you can use. Moderating the protein into this range has been shown to preserve muscle mass, improve your body composition, and provide other health benefits in those people who eat low-carb diets or higher carb diets. So they're even making the claim that getting this protein right can give you benefit whether you eat lower or higher carb diet. Now, when they say higher carb, I don't think they mean a high carb diet. I think they mean you could have the wiggle room, like we talked about earlier with the athletes, to be able to have more carbs. They said that while this recommendation is at least 50% higher than the minimum RDA for protein, which is currently at 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, it is less than the high protein diets, which call for 2 grams per kilogram of protein per day. So that's not even of your ideal weight, that's of your current weight. That's a lot of protein. They said that this amount of protein is only beneficial, talking about the higher amount, when needs are truly increased, such as when you're healing from major surgery or injury. So if you hurt yourself, if you've had some kind of a surgery lately, maybe that's the time that you bump up your protein and it's beneficial. Otherwise, if you're generally healthy, not this elite athlete bodybuilding type of person, you probably need to keep your protein, again, down in that 1.2 grams to 1.7 grams per kilogram of ideal body weight per day for adults. So figure out what that is for you. Use that calculator over on Google. And that was a great article, you guys. I was really happy to see that. And Tammy over here says 1 pound equals 2.2 kilograms. So I was pretty close, Tammy, on the estimation that a 200-pound goal for your ideal body weight was right at that 80 kilos. And then you multiply it times those numbers, and it's right at like 96 to 115. So that's pretty good. So the bottom line in this Jimmy Rants, there's a lot of debate within keto, and I really don't understand why, because it's situational. If you're an athlete, if you're a bodybuilder, you need more protein. Let's just face it, you need and can use more protein in your diet. And I say go for it. If you need it, use it. If you have to eat it in your diet, or you want to eat more protein in your diet, then make sure you're doing appropriate activity that would let you use it and utilize it. That's pretty much what it's for, so do it. But if you're insulin resistant, if you're maybe a little less active, I don't want to assume just because you're insulin resistant, you're less active, so don't misunderstand me. I think you can be very active as an insulin resistant person, and you've got to find that balance of what moderating your protein is. But moderating protein is much more important for people with insulin resistance. And I'm going to speak up for that group all day, every day, as we say here in the South, because not enough people are articulating things in the keto space that speaks to the insulin resistant person. It's usually for athletes and bodybuilders and people that are treating chronic disease, but not necessarily insulin resistance. So you're gonna hear Jimmy Moore talk about that quite a bit early and often. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. I'm gonna come to Instagram Live first. I'll be coming to you guys next here on Facebook, so stay tuned. Welcome in, you guys. Thanks for being here on this episode of Jimmy Rants. Alberto says, liver has carbs too, glucose, and not the harmful fructose. That's right. How do you limit to 30 grams if you're doing 1 meal a day? Yes, W. Deal, that's what I asked when I talked to Dr. Lehman. And I know he says that you get that insulin and blood sugar response, but I do OMAD quite a bit. And for those of you that don't know the lingo, OMAD, O-M-A-D, stands for 1 meal a day. It's a form of intermittent fasting where you're basically eating 1 meal. And when you're done with that 1 meal, you're fasting for 23 and a half hours until your next meal, until your next OMAD. So I still do OMAD, W. Deal, and I wonder out loud if the fasting period helps to mitigate some of that. It has to. You would think it would, because if you're not putting any food in your body for 23 and a half hours, yes, in the hour or two after having a big meal, which you should have a big meal if you're only eating one meal a day, you could be getting 125, 130 grams of protein in that one meal. So does your body have a glucose response? I bet it does. Does your body have an insulin response? I bet it does. But does it come back down within those next 3, 4, 5 hours after eating? And then you get the benefits that continue into that long fast. I don't think science has vetted this out enough, but I think you get benefit from doing that one meal a day, and that the intermittent fasting period does help to erase any potential negative effects that would come from eating that one meal in a day. Alicia says, my dad is type 2 diabetic, been doing keto for 40 days, dropped one of his medications. His blood ketones recently were 3.3. Yes, he is doing very well. That's awesome. He is 72 years old. Oh, wow. God bless him. My dad is 70. Yeah, 70. And he wouldn't try keto if I threw it at him. I'm keto carnivore too. I'm 75 fat, 25, or 75 fat, 25 protein, says Corella. Yeah. I'm probably in the same range, something like 75, 25. Some days I push it to like 80, 20, but most days about 1/4 of my calories are coming from protein. So that's good. All right, we're going to pop over to Facebook Live now. Thanks for being here, you guys. Appreciate you joining in on this Jimmy Rants today. What do you mean it's going to be interesting? You're always interesting. Oh, Maria, you're a little bit biased. You're one of my big fans, so I appreciate that. Does sugar and carbs raise triglycerides? Well, Dana, we're not answering general questions, my dear. That's on Friday afternoons. So join me on Friday afternoons. That's when we answer general questions. But duh, yeah, it does. We can talk about why on Friday. Kimberly says, I try to keep my protein around 50 to 60 every day. I feel it's the sweet spot for me right now. I feel like my hair loss has stopped. Love learning more and more about keto. Yeah, Kimberly, some people would hear that 50 to 60 and think that's pretty low, but you figured it out. You know kind of that sweet spot for you. For me last year, doing that very high protein experiment, right after the very high protein, where I ended up having about 40 to 45% of my diet come from protein. And I had 15 bouts of hypoglycemia, by the way, so it was no fun. It was not good for me. I followed that up with a very high fat diet to the tune of 90% of my calories coming from fat and only 10% from protein. I wanted to see what that would do, and I didn't do well on that either. So I took the 45% protein, and I took the 10% protein, and also the fat. I took the like 55, 60% fat and the 90% fat, and I'm like, all right, let's find that middle ground. And the middle ground for me has been right at the 75 to 80%. So it's why I'm not doing a traditional carnivore diet. Just carnivore would be around 65, 70% fat. This keto carnivore bumps up the fat just a little bit to 75 to 80% of the calories, and then the rest coming from protein. And that, for Jimmy Moore, is the sweet spot. So I encourage you, if you're not feeling well at whatever level of protein or fat or whatever you're doing, tweak it a little bit, move things around, and Kimberly has certainly found her sweet spot for what works for her. Tammy says, I have insulin resistance and trying to convert to carnivore. Is it better to eat 2 to 3 meals and break up the protein? So Tammy, for me, I eat one meal. Basically one meal. Some days I do 2. Most days it ends up being one meal right around the middle of the day. And I just find that works so well for me. And I'm losing weight. I'm still feeling well. The only problem that I find doing one big meal is sometimes right after the meal, I might have a little bit of digestion issue. that makes me have to go to the bathroom. So I'm working with Christine, my wife, to get some more digestive enzymes to maybe help deal with all the fat that's in the meal. But other than that, I feel well. You guys see me on here every single day. When I do the one in the morning, I'm in a fasted state generally. I ate, what time is it? Almost 6 o'clock. I ate somewhere around like 1:30 today. 1 or 1:30 was my meal. And I feel good and did well, and everything's going great. So I don't think you necessarily have to break it up into 2 to 3 meals. There's certainly no harm in it, Tammy, if you choose to do that. My mom and dad are in their 70s. They love keto. They struggle to stay clean keto, but they try their best. Hey, I think a dirty keto or a halfway keto is better than no keto. The no keto is the one that's the problem. I'm pre-diabetic, doing keto carnivore. What is a good fat protein ratio? So you're gonna have to figure it out for yourself. All I can do is tell you what I do. And for me, it's that 75 to 80% fat, 20 to 25% protein. Dan says, I normally get people to around 80 to 100 grams of protein a day. Most of my clients are insulin resistant older women, and they seem to do well. And Dan, you've seen it, you know, and especially for that group of people you described who are the majority of your clients. They are insulin resistant. They are probably a little bit less active. They're not trying to be these big bodybuilders in the gym. They're just trying to live as long and healthy as they possibly can. And so moderating protein helps with that. My fellow keto for real life people friend, can you briefly explain keto carnivore, Dana? So I did 2 videos about this over the past couple of months. If you'll go on YouTube and type in a keyword search, Jimmy Rants, and then carnivore, you'll find where I gave my updates about this. The very first one I did, I described it fully. I describe it fully every time I've talked about it, but I don't want to spend time on this Jimmy Rants repeating information that I spent like half an hour on explaining before. So thanks for being here, you guys. The bottom line in this Jimmy Rants, and we have this new medical review report, and these doctors all came to the conclusion that we need to be eating more of a low carbohydrate, high fat, moderate protein diet for insulin resistance. If you like to work out in the gym and you like to try to build muscle, then maybe you can bump up your protein just a bit more and not have the glucose and insulin response. Sherry says, when pushing to add the protein in, is there an easy to go item? Eggs, cheese. I find I'm having many days where I need between 5 to 10 grams more. The best way to get 5 to 10 grams more, Sherry, is 1 to 2 eggs. 1 egg has 7 grams of protein, plus you get the healthy fats that's in the egg. So 2 would be 14. There you go. You got it. Couple of eggs, that's it. And if you've never done it before, it can be gross to people that aren't used to it, but especially if you have backyard chickens and real good quality eggs, throw a raw egg or 2 on top of any food that you eat. I know it's gross to some people, but a raw egg or 2 on top of any meal makes that so much more nutrient dense. You get that little bit of extra protein, you get healthy fats, you get healthy cholesterol, so many benefits. Try it, you guys. And that ooey gooiness of the yolk going all over the top of your food, oh, I'm just dreaming of it now. All right, guys, that's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. As always, you can engage live in the content here on Instagram Live at Living Low Carb Man. I also simulcast on my Facebook page, so thank you to my Facebook livers for being here. You guys hold tight. We'll be here for the after party here in a minute. But you can watch it on Instagram for up to 24 hours on replay if you happen to miss the live. After 24 hours, poof, it does disappear. Hop on over to YouTube. You can see all the past episodes. Type in a keyword, Jimmy Rants. Also, youtube.com/LivingLowCarbMan. Finally, the best of the best moments of this here show are in podcast form. It's the Jimmy Rants podcast on Stitcher as well as on Apple Podcasts. And all of these links, you guys, are at JimmyRants.com. So until next time, Instagram Live, we'll see you then.